shut up and sit down.
Hey, welcome. I'm John Caldera, president of the Independence Institute, and you are in for a treat. Why? Because I have something called Bell's palsy. That's right, this side of my face doesn't work. This side of my face does work. I'm paralyzed. I am now a victim. I get victim status, a handicap sticker, the whole damn thing. It's awesome. So if you hear me slur, it's not because I'm drunk just yet. It's because I can't speak. So it's wonderful. And I get people coming up to me and doing nice things like, oh, I'm so sorry about your face. And I've been getting that since I was a kid. So now I get it. Hey, we're going to spend some time tonight talking about the election results here in Colorado, also nationally. We're going to take your Zoom calls. I believe John Fund is going to be joining us, and I'm looking forward to his take on what's going on nationally. If you want to be part of it, you need to raise your hand on the Zoom call. No, not physically raise your hand, electronically raise your hand by hitting that little button on the side, and we will get you in the queue and come on and talk to us. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or a great caucus room, you can watch, but you can't be part of the conversation. You got to go to our Zoom meeting in order to do that. So with all that out of the way, I hope you have a great drink. I've got a spectacular Star Trek glass with Black Label. I need to also tell you this. So a few weeks ago, we were broken into at the Independence Institute, our headquarters. Yep, they stole a whole bunch of our booze. Now, I don't mind them taking the cameras. I didn't mind them damaging the place, but they took our Coors Light. I was pretty hacked off about it. So we're going to make up for it tonight. I want to introduce Ben Murray, who is our latest recruit at the Independence Institute. He runs our Fiscal Policy Center. And what are you drinking?
Well, again, I was a victim of the break-in because I really wanted to drink a Coors Light tonight. And instead I'm drinking, I don't even know what, it's a margarita.
It's Coyote Gold canned margarita.
So it's actually quite nice. I hate to admit it.
The official margarita of the Independence Institute.
And John, I got to say to start off, one of the nice things probably for you about your Bell's palsy is you're able to start this drunk and nobody knows the difference. So from the get-go.
It's a good slur. I can't say bees very well. They say I'm going to get better, but I don't know when. Sorry, it's more your problem now than it is mine. All right, I tell you what, let's start off with the big victory of the night for taxpayers here in Colorado. Before we get up to the national scene, this was a terrible year for conservatives in Colorado. The left won another seat in the Senate. They taxed us for smokers. They repealed Gallagher and our protections there. They raised a minimum wage or a payroll tax for family leave. They passed national popular vote. We got people in Boulder voting to put killer wolves out in somebody else's backyard. I mean, it's just a delicious year. But when it came to protecting our flat tax and Tabor, it was a home run. The work we did here at Independence to get Prop 116 on and passed, and our friends and allies who got 117 on to do it. Real quickly, I was shocked that 117 passed. The polling wasn't that good, but it was clear. People in Colorado want a say over their taxes. What was your takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on. I totally agree with your assessment. Our measure, Proposition 116, to cut the flat tax, passed with almost 58%, and 117, as you mentioned, passed with nearly 53% of the vote. And what that tells us is that Coloradans, and we've said this about Colorado for many years, and it's proved to be true again this year. We're an odd state. We tend to be socially liberal, but still fiscally conservative. We like our low taxes. We have relatively low taxes in this state still, in spite of the best efforts by progressives. And we have some really good restraints on taxing and spending in this state. And what Colorado voters told us is we still like Tabor. We still like the idea of voters having the right to vote on taxes, and in this case now also fees. And we like our flat tax, and we want it to be low.
You know, the left wants a progressive income tax. They were going to put it on the ballot this year. We at the Independence Institute responded with a flat tax cut. We have now permanently cut the income tax here down to 4.55. If they had their way, they would have passed a progressive income tax, and the highest level would be at 9%. And then what our friends at Colorado Rising Action were able to put on with 117 strengthens Tabor, gives us back some of what the courts took away. As you know, the court said, as long as the legislature calls it a fee, they don't have to ask permission. Now they have to ask permission. It is spectacular. So we had these two shining, incredible takebacks on this blue wave, and pretty much everything else, well, kind of stunk. What's with you people? What's wrong with Colorado? I need to know. I tell you what, I want to get into some callers, and Ben will be here to weigh in on that. Our friend John Fund is I don't know where he's calling in from. He's usually all over the place. What's great about John Fund is he knows more about local races than any national reporter I know. You've seen his work in Wall Street Journal and the Federalist and National Review. And I wanted to ask him about the Trump election particularly. I'm probably like many of you, I'm a little down about this Trump election. I was looking forward to it so much, more because I wanted to hear them cry again on National Public Radio, and that's not going to happen. So I don't know, John Fund, are you with us? If you are, say hello.
I am.
There you are.
I am, and I have a Grand Marnier in hand.
Do you? Now I can hear you, but I can't see you. So if your camera's off, you're in your pajamas.
All
again,
right. I'm somewhat relaxed, so I am very pleased to. Once I told you I was relaxed.
All right.
I'm very pleased to address Coloradans for liberty, freedom, and guns, tobacco, and alcohol, and all of those other things that you do out at your annual retreat. And I want to at least put a little bit of national perspective. Relatively bad news in Colorado. A week ago, people completely different, including our friends on the left. Joe Biden had an average poll be a blue wave. It was going to sweep out the Republican Senate. Republicans for seats in the House.
I tell you what, John Fund, we're having such a hard time hearing you because you are so relaxed that it's obviously not even working. So I tell you what, let's put John on a quick hold. Let's see if we can get a better connection. So we'll turn off John. We'll get back to you, John. Anyway, give us wave your hand and tell us what you think about this. I particularly want to know why Colorado went the right way on taxes and went the wrong way on everything else. I want to know if Trump ever had a shot here, or did he bring down Cory Gardner, the one loss we had in the United States Senate? And more importantly, I'd really like to think, what does the Trump presidency mean? Will he get back in? Will he be able to claw his way back in? Or will he start his empire in exile, which I think is quite likely? You worked for Ted Cruz for a lot of years. Ted had an odd relationship with the president. Does Cruz want this guy to be president, or does he want to play foil to Biden?
Well, I'll start by saying I really don't want to speak for Ted Cruz.
You do it. Do it.
But my impression from the time I spent working there is that he really does support what the president's doing. I mean, he's not always in agreement with the president, and he has been vocal about some disagreements on various issues. But his attitude after 2016 really became, and this was reflected in how he communicated internally, privately with his staff, which is, the American people have spoken. This is our president. There's a lot of great things that we can get done, and we should push forward serving the people of Texas and trying to push for a more conservative agenda. And I think we've done that to a large extent. There are a lot of failures, in my opinion. There are a lot of things we could have done better. As a fiscal policy person, I'm not thrilled with how much we've run up the debt under this administration, but there are a lot of good things as well.
I don't see how Trump pulls this one out. I think the courts will never allow him to grab victory out of this. I cannot imagine the Roberts Court giving him an election. I just don't see it. Anyway, I'm going to try to get John Flynn back again. If it's bad again, John, we'll figure something else. I think you got a bad internet there, so maybe you should stop watching so many adult films and pay attention to this.
I think my transmission is better now. Can you
There
hear
we
me?
go. Yes, I can. Much better.
So the polling and the expectations of the left and the politically correct movement were dramatically different a week ago. Let's look at where we are now. Joe Biden will have won a race of about 3 percentage points, a narrow electoral college victory, assuming there are no legal challenges that change results. And he has no mandate. He has a shell of an administration. He's already announced he's a transitional president. That means I'm not running for a second term. That means we don't have an incumbent to run against in 4 years, which is significant. Incumbency is a big deal. And look at the Senate. Republicans kept almost all of their vulnerable incumbents, except for Cory Gardner and Martha McSally in Arizona. They're going to win those Georgia runoffs. I'm happy to take a question on why that's going to happen. So with the Senate in Republican hands, no Green New Deal, no dramatic increases in capital gains tax, no District of Columbia as a state, no Puerto Rico as a state, no court packing. Joe Manchin and other moderate Democrats have already said they view themselves as new leverage in moving the Democratic Party in the Senate to the center. And in the House, Nancy Pelosi is serving her last 2 years as Speaker. Parties in power lose seats in midterms. When all is said and done, it looks like the Republicans are going to be at 211 or 212 House seats, Democrats at about 222 or 223. That's a majority you can barely manage the House floor on. The centrists on one hand and the AOC squad crowd on the other are going to drive her crazy. And there are 17 moderate Democrats who barely won re-election in suburban districts last week. So you also then move to the national news about ballot initiatives. You said you had some good news on some ballot initiatives in Colorado. I'm from California. California is a complete wasteland, as you know, politically. If you have a Republican next to your name, you're practically a hunted species. But when ideas go on the ballot, whether it's regulating the dialysis industry per union constraints, whether it's using unions to crack down on delivery apps and rideshare apps, whether it's changing Prop 13, which 42 years ago was the most dramatic tax cut California has ever seen. When you look at Prop 16, which would have restored racial preferences in California, when you look at even some bond measures, Californians rejected every bad idea and preserved a great deal of liberty and fiscal common sense. So we have every reason to be despondent if we choose to be, But, there's a famous saying, the grass is not always greener on the other side. And I've talked to liberals, and I have liberal friends, and I monitor the liberal social media. They're like the old villain in the black and white silent movies with the top hat and the curly mustache, snarling curses foiled again. The reason why they really are worried is this. For the last 4 years, they have tried to tell the American people, sit down and shut up. If you don't agree with us, you're deplorable, you're racist, sexist, homophobic, against all good things and puppies too. And that, it basically fooled them. They fooled themselves. They intimidated people into not speaking out. A Cato Institute poll over the summer showed that 77% of conservatives were not comfortable letting people they knew know of their political views. And the media amplified that. So people were told to sit down and shut up. And they did largely remain silent. But on election day, they voted. 19%, John, 19% of Trump voters told exit pollsters that they were completely unwilling to tell their friends, neighbors, relatives, or even family how they voted. So the left,
it is definitely easier to come out as gay than it is to come out as a Trump supporter.
So just to conclude, the left hoisted themselves by their own petard. Their suffocating political correctness created a backlash that they didn't notice because the media misreported everything, and the left believed what the mainstream media was saying, and they were completely surprised because they misread the American people because the feedback loop was completely broken.
We talked earlier, and you feel okay about Trump not getting reelected. Give me a really quick comment on that. I am disappointed. I am so disappointed because it was so close, and I really wanted him to win just so I could see them go off their gourd again. It was purely selfish.
I understand that a lot of people were happy to try to use the middle finger to irritate the left in this respect. I understand all that. I'm not okay with Trump losing, but I want to be somewhat objective in what that means. In a two-party political system, you're going to lose probably every 8 years. And I'll tell you that in the last 100-odd years, Franklin Roosevelt not counting because it was World War II, only one party, that was Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, was able to transfer power to another member of its party for president for a third term. Every other time, you've had an incumbent lose in the first term, or the party gets turfed out after 8 years, like Obama's party was. So we were going to be up against an enormous deficit and history in 2024 with Trump finishing his second term. Now, you have Biden, who's not going to be running for a second term. Is there anyone in Washington who actually believes he would or could? And then you have a whole crop of new candidates, competition that will be forming for the future. For a party that believes in competition in business, the Republican Party is often very hierarchical. You have to stand in line, wait your turn, and they don't particularly welcome new talent. Well, I don't think Donald Trump is going to run again in 2024. I think he'll pretend to run. He'll try to get attention. He'll try to be a kingmaker, but he's not running again in 2024. I think I know the man. I've known him for 32 years. Having said that, we're going to have competition now, real genuine political competition, whether it's from Mike Pence or Nikki Haley or Kristi Noem or Governor DeSantis or Governor Scott or Governor Abbott or Senator Hawley or Senator Cotton. This is a good thing. This is a party refreshing its talent pool and presenting new alternatives to the American people, especially to the American people, John, who surprised everyone. 36% of Hispanic males voted for Donald Trump. 18% of Black males voted for Donald Trump. 30% of LGBTQ voters voted for Donald Trump. The Republican Party expanded its coalition dramatically. And by the way, to all of those people who said only, uneducated yahoos were going to be voting for Donald Trump, here's a number you will not hear in the mainstream media. Did you know that Donald Trump carried white female college graduates?
carried them to where? To do what?
To win.
I
He
know.
won them.
All right. You make me feel a little better. I'm still going to grieve this one a little bit. And again, I know we're in a good position. Nationally speaking, we're in a great position. I think in the state, we're in a very, very dangerous position. John, I hope you're right, and I hope in 2 years we take back the House. Do you think that's possible?
Well, history and tradition, and I think the fact that liberalism doesn't work would dictate that. With one exception, the party in power has lost seats in its first midterm election, with one exception in modern history. Nancy Pelosi is going to have her moderate members vote on very unpopular legislation. That legislation will probably die in the Senate, so she won't even get it passed into law. And I would simply remind you what Ronald Reagan told people after the Republican Party was crushed in 1974 after Watergate. And it takes about 30 seconds, but it's worth it. He said, you know, liberalism has won a temporary lease on power, but liberalism itself hasn't changed. They will govern from the left. They will campaign as if they were moderates, but they will govern from the left. When they govern from the left, if they pass their policies, they will fail. If they fail, people will notice. If people notice, we will have another chance to communicate with them and talk to them and convince them of the correctness of our ideas and that we have learned from the people. Just as Donald Trump, I think, convinced a lot of people that establishment Republicans had forgotten the roots of the angst that many working class Americans had been experiencing the last 20 years. So Ronald Reagan said, if liberalism is in power, they will make mistakes, people will notice, and they will lose elections. I firmly believe that will happen under Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer, because they can't govern from the center. Their base won't let them.
John Fund, thank you as always. Enjoy your drink. We appreciate it. Let's grab some of these other cheers. Let's grab some of these other calls. Let's talk to Adam here. Adam, welcome. I'm really glad you could spend some time. Most importantly, what are you drinking?
Well, I'm about to indulge in what are these? Not Your Father's root beers.
Ah,
have you had these? Yeah.
and we don't even see your picture. What is it with these people not showing their pictures? We want to see the inside of your home.
Okay. Let's see. Here we go.
Oh, there we are. Oh, actually.
Oh, darn it. I got that stupid background on. My bad. I swear to you, I'm not in the bay.
Actually, after looking at you, could you please turn your camera off?
Done. Okay. Hey, listen, on 116, 117, I got a unique reason that those passed.
Yes.
You ready for this? We have California to thank. Now, I'm a native, so let me have this just for a second. Californians, as John Fund said, they're used to voting on ballot measures. They've lived under an out-of-control government, taxes, crazy fees, and they've moved here in droves. What other explanation is there?
But the rest of the ballot voted like Californians when it came to tax increases. Ben, you've done a little research on this. Even though we are so excited about rebuilding Tabor and getting a permanent tax increase that they cannot undo without going to a vote to the people, how much did taxpayers win versus lose?
Yeah, that's a great question. John Fund put it really well when he highlighted how conservative California was this time around. Colorado was more liberal this election cycle on ballot measures than California. So we may
stop there for a second. That is worth repeating. Colorado was more progressive this year than California was, where they put down racial preferences. They put down, they allowed independent contractors. They kept a tax cut. Colorado went the other way.
Yeah. So Adam, I hear what you're saying. There might be something to that, but let me give the negative side. It's my job to do that as the fiscal guy. We passed Proposition 118. That was at least a $1.2 billion tax increase. And what's worse is it's a payroll tax, which means it's a tax on working class people. It's a tax on wages. If you collect a paycheck for a living, then you bear the entire burden of that tax. If you're an investor or you make money on rental properties or corporate earnings or this or that, you don't bear the burden of that tax at all. This is a tax on workers, tax on lower earners that was pushed by Colorado's progressives who claimed to want tax fairness. The irony there. And then you have Proposition EE, which was another tax increase of about $170 million. And then we had Amendment B, which was not exactly a tax increase. It's hard to quantify how much it was, but it was a tax increase. And more importantly, what we did there, because look, I understand there are people on conservatives on both sides of Amendment B, but what I contend is we gave up, as conservatives, as people who want limited government, we gave up the only leverage that we had, the only bargaining chip that we had for a better deal, for some kind of protections on against skyrocketing property taxes. We gave up our only leverage for something better, which I think was foolish.
Ben and I spent a lot of time going back and forth to lots of debates over 116 and 117. And what was so enjoyable was that the opponents on the left who want the progressive income tax kept screaming that a flat tax cut was a big gift to the right, to rich people. But at the same time, none of them would ever come out against the tobacco tax, which as a percentage of your income, poor people pay about 50 times, not percent, 50 times more. The payroll tax, which only working people, not people who make money off investments, and then the Gallagher thing. All these things hurt poor people, but yet the left was so upset with our tax cut because rich people might get a tax cut too.
Right, and now that the left has successfully made the tax code in Colorado more regressive, more tilted against the poor, they're going to come back next year or the year after, and they're going to say, our tax code is so regressive. We need to punish the rich and raise taxes on the rich to offset the tax code, which we just made incredibly more progressive, or regressive rather.
Hey, Adam, thank you so much. We're going to keep going with these folks. We got a few folks lined up. Again, if you want to be part, just raise your hand. That is on the Zoom meeting. Press a little button that is raising your hand. Don't actually physically raise your hand because then you just look silly. Let's talk to John. Hey, John, welcome. Tell me, what are you drinking? John, are you there? Oh, well, I'll just keep drinking while you do that.
While we're waiting on John, I want to speak to some of the things that John Fund said, which I really appreciated his insight and input there. I worked in the United States Senate for 7 years, working for Ted Cruz, and my prediction, and this is maybe the negative perspective on some of the things that John said, is what we're probably going to see if we end up with a very slim majority in the Senate, the House being controlled by a slim margin by Nancy Pelosi, and Biden in the White House, is you're going to see a lot of administrative action, a lot of the admin giving a middle finger to Congress that's gridlocked and can't do anything to check the administration. They're going to do a lot administratively. And then what you're going to see Congress do is the Senate will confirm Biden's picks for his cabinet for different political appointments, and they'll confirm his activist judges. Because what I predict is Republican senators like Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, they will side with the left. Remember, we don't have a filibuster for judges, so they only need 51. They don't just need a simple majority. So if you get Susan Collins and Mitt Romney, boom, you confirm everything, every judge in the Senate, and they're gonna go, well, the American people have spoken, and Joe Biden is president, and so you're gonna see all those judges confirmed. And then the other thing that you see in the Senate, when we have or in Congress rather, when you have a slim majority in the Senate like that, is Republicans go along to get along. They have no spine. Whenever there's any kind of major legislation, major spending bills, if there's any kind of a major reform like immigration bill or this or that they feel they have to pass, there's a lot of political pressure, you end up getting enough moderate, squishy Republicans who cave, and they'll go, well, the White House is controlled by Democrats and the House is controlled by, so they'll squish out on these bipartisan pieces of legislation. So a lot of damage can still be done, even though we have a very slim majority in the Senate.
All right. Now let's go back to John and let's see if he's drinking better. Welcome, John. What are you drinking?
I'm with the Canadian whiskey still.
Oh, still.
But I've got kind of a big perspective question here. We're not going to talk about modern monetary theory or even voter fraud. And that is the big picture. of what happened in America, voter side of fraud, where you had a guy, Joe Biden, who, other than being Obama's vice president, was probably the most inarticulate and weak presidential candidate since what, Michael Dukakis? And even though Trump increased his vote totals by 8 million, which is quite incredible, that fraud aside, and I think there was, I certainly believe there was, that Joe Biden, who had no enthusiasm, who was totally corrupt, and yes, that was concealed, has achieved more votes in a presidential election than any candidate ever. To me, that is almost incomprehensible. What can explain that?
You know, I look in here in Colorado, I have never seen a senatorial candidate that did not want to be a senator more than John Hickenlooper. And COVID was a blessing for him. This way he could stay home and not go out and talk to people and be challenged and maybe have difficult questions. In the same way, Biden was able to, with a willing press, stay in his basement and watch Trump put himself into trouble. Yes, they are both very comparable, Senator Hickenlooper and Senator Biden. There's not much there. My big worry with Biden is that he's going to get pushed around by the left. I hope that this election keeps moderate Democrats active. They did not expect this. They're all happy that Trump lost, but there are no happy Democrats in Washington tonight. Any disagreement on that?
I think that's exactly right. I think that they way underperformed, and they really should have done a lot better by any reasonable measure based on expectations.
God bless pollsters.
God bless pollsters.
God bless pollsters and the media. All I really wanted was for Trump to win so I could hear them cry on NPR. That's all I wanted. It was such a tiny little wish. Hey, John, thanks for the call. I tell you what, let's keep rolling. I think my face is holding up. Perilous. I can't feel anything.
Do you feel that at all when you touch it? Is it just nothing?
It's nothing. There's nothing there.
It's incredible.
You can hit me.
Can I?
Yeah, later. Let's talk to Steve. Hey, Steve, welcome. So glad to have you. What are you drinking?
Hey, John. It's your brother, Steve, and I'm
brother Steve.
I'm drinking, what am I drinking, Michelle? Sparkling water. And, anyway, I'm always proud of you, but I'm particularly proud of you because it takes a lot of courage for you to go on live right now. And
with a face as ugly as mine? Thank you. That's really nice.
So anyway, good job. So here's what I wanted to say. I don't know what the president has to do in order to win, but if there's a lot of folks on this call nodding up and down, oh yes, there's been this massive collusion, whether it's throwing ballots out or whatever the Dominion software is capable of doing or not doing, I have a very difficult time standing by and accepting these results if there's been collusion and corruption at the level of governors, of state secretaries in the various states, state Supreme Courts like Pennsylvania, to just say, well, oh well, better luck to us next time. I'm not willing to accept that yet. And when I hear certain people like John Fund talk as if Biden is going to be the president, I'm not there at this point. So I guess I'd kind of like to maybe hear your thoughts, hear some of the other thoughts of people who—
I have a hard time seeing how any of the courts are going to reverse this election. I don't see it. I think there was corruption. I love how the press will not talk about it. I think what's going to happen is you're going to have, again, a quiet, near majority of Americans think that our president is illegitimate. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means in the future. I agree. I would love to see the courts step in and fix this. They won't. And I can't imagine Justice Roberts being so brave. He wouldn't even turn down Obamacare. He is not going to undo what looks like the will of the people. That being said, Rob Nadelson, who's our constitutional studies guy here, did an incredible piece for the Epic Times. He was going to join us tonight, but he's not feeling so well. Hopefully it's not COVID. And he did this piece saying that the Constitution gives the legislatures power to do something if they see that there's fraud. That if the election wasn't done on a time specific, on a date specific, the legislators can then elect the electoral votes for their state. So it might be there's a better chance in that route than the other.
Well, then how do we get integrity in voting in the future then? I mean, this really at some level, and I don't mean to make this sound like hyperbole, but this could be the end of our democracy, of our republic, if going forward, none of us have faith that the votes are being counted the way they should be, that they're actually being counted the right way. I mean, it's
not like it didn't happen before. JFK won because of some very interesting elections in Illinois and in Texas. You had a thought on this, Ben?
Well, Steve, let's remember that, regardless of what happens with the presidential election, there is an opportunity here to address the problem of integrity of our elections, insecurities in our voting process in various states, and fraud. And let's acknowledge that there are really two sides to this, right? There's instances where there's fraud and illegal activity based on current state law, but there's also the problem that state legislators pass laws that open the door to fraud, right? And even though the process may be a legal process, the process is set up such that we're inviting fraud. I mean, that's what we have in Colorado, right? Where we say, okay, we're just going to mail ballots to everybody. Now, that doesn't mean that fraud is going to happen. It doesn't mean it has to happen, but you're inviting. And what really should happen, and look, I'm not an expert on these things, but I think that most people out there with common sense are thinking, why don't we just make the vast majority of people show up in person, show their ID, and vote on paper? And for the few people who are either in the military or disabled and can't come in or this or that.
We used to do that in Colorado. And then absentee ballots became popular. Permanent absentee ballots became more popular. Then mail-in ballots became popular. And voters like mail-in ballots. It's not going to go away. My prediction is we're going to see those states that did mail-in balloting keep with mail-in balloting.
But John, I want to push back because my point here is that regardless of what happens in the election, this is an opportunity to reignite the conversation, not just about fraud under existing bad laws, but reignite the conversation about maybe we should, at the state level, re-examine our laws and shut that door to fraud to begin with.
Agreed. Hey, Steve, I agree with you. I'm as concerned about it as you are. I just don't think Trump is going to be able to do it. Hey, thank you so much. Let's keep rolling. I know Bradley is on the line. Why don't we say, or should we not go to Bradley? Bradley would be great. All right, Bradley, tell me, what are you drinking?
Some Canadian Mist tonight. So Canadian whiskey, essentially.
Nice.
It comes in a plastic bottle.
You got a little something on the bottom of your
I know. It's not as big as it used to be, but yeah, a little cooler for the winter. But so John, you wrote on Facebook some good thoughts about, Trump's personality in this election and also in the past 4 years. And he's been a very bombastic president. He's been a very controversial president. As a voter, right, I struggle with him because it's hard to vote for that personality, but we vote for him because we agree with the policies, we disagree with the policies of the other side. Knowing how this election ended, do you feel like our next candidate from a conservative perspective has to be presidential or has to be controversial? What's a better choice for the party?
What a great question. And mind you, I was reluctant to vote for Trump the first time. I was proud to vote for him the second time because I don't care about personalities. I care about policies. And he delivered like no one has. He might be one of the most transformational presidents of my lifetime, even though he's bombastic. But I'm different. Most people want a president that is symbolic of the nation, a fatherly figure that makes them feel like it's good to be an American. And Trump could not do that. People on the right didn't like it, and everyone on the left hated it. So my guess is next time around, hopefully we can find a fusion of that. Somebody who will make policy changes, but do it in a way that isn't all about that person. That's my hope. And by the way, I'm not convinced he's not going to be back in 4 years. I can't imagine he's just going to retire and live in exile on some island someplace. What do you think?
I agree. I think that, given a little bit here and there during his 4 years with his personality, he might have had a much better shot here. I think he gave away this election to a degree with his unwillingness to compromise. And I get it from a conservative perspective, but I don't get it from a party perspective. And I struggle there a lot.
Republicans may be in a tricky spot here because there are a lot of people that were brought into the Republican Party because of Trump. They are Trump supporters first and foremost. They're not Republican supporters. And, national Republicans are having to make a decision right now about whether to back Trump or not on all of these legal challenges. And they're walking a tightrope. And what I fear may be the case, and I'm hearing this from Trump supporters right now, including people I know who work in the administration, or have worked in the administration, which is if the GOP deserts Trump now, I'm deserting the GOP. And, with all the optimism about, oh, this is great, we've got all these new voters and now Trump's on his way out and we get a more reasonable guy in there. I mean, I think some of that talk is kind of naive, as though all of a sudden now the GOP voters, conservatives, libertarian, people who've come to back Trump, new voters, are all of a sudden are going to be okay with another Mitt Romney or John McCain. That's fantasy.
That's a fair point. I grew to love how bombastic our president is. I love how politically incorrect he is. And I always thought he had a shot for re-election because he won because of political correctness. And political correctness has only gotten worse. You can't say what you want. And a lot of us who have kids who are now doing online school, we get to hear what their teachers are saying and get a sense of the propaganda that goes on there. Hey, Bradley, thanks for the call. I tell you what, let's talk to Kirk, and then we'll talk to our very own Kathleen Chandler after that. So, Kirk, welcome. What are you drinking tonight? Oh, come on, Kirk Watson. I know you're out there.
There we go.
There you go.
Yes, I am sucking on what remains of ice in what was Lafroig. So.
Aha. One of the finest scotch.
Last name like Watson, I have to go that way. Yeah, I'd like to comment a little bit about on the SCOTUS won't overturn the election due to the reticence of the Roberts Court, and that makes perfect sense. And I certainly hope that is not something that they have to do. But at the same time, if there is some blatant shenanigans, I'm not going to call it fraud, I hope that we can have some sort of order to try to alleviate or rectify some of those conditions. I had the fun-filled task of looking at the UMC, the University Memorial Center up at CU. The Boulder County clerk was actually there, and 20 or so New Era USA kids were there, and they were going out. A couple of young, attractive women would go out and talk to a guy, and ditto with the guys trying to look for girls. Have you voted? So they're asking the right question. They say no. Well, come with us. And they kind of surround and get them to within feet of the ballot box, well within the 100-foot line. Have you registered? Oh, no, we can register. We can, but they didn't ask were they registered in another state. So, and also in canvassing, I saw a house with multiple, 8 or 10 different voters, some of which were inactive, but not all. And so is there fraud? Who knows? We have to go through every single roll and check and see if all those voters actually live there. Are they legally there? It's very difficult, plausible deniability sort of case, but the actions of the Boulder County clerk and New Era, and by the way, she used to run New Era before she was clerk, at least in Colorado.
Let me jump on that.
Enormous amount of loose ballots out there, and that's just one of the systems.
It's not just ballots. Colorado was the only state that has all mail-in ballots and same-day voter registration. If you might recall, it was so easy that you didn't even have to live someplace to vote on the same day, register and vote on the same day. You had to intend to live there. That's when we did some research and I decided to intend to live in Colorado Springs and voted in the recall election there, which helped tighten up that law because they were not happy about it. A law that they passed last year, thanks to our Democratic progressive legislature, might have been the year before, requires voting centers in every college campus. The same law originally written would not allow a polling place, a voting center, in any building that was attached to or in a police station. So the idea was people who feel comfortable at a police station, we don't want them voting, but out-of-state college students, you can register them the same day and get them to vote. That is a ground game. That is vote harvesting, and it is completely legal, assuming that kid didn't vote in his home state. They know how to register voters, harvest ballots, and if they still don't have enough votes, go onto college campuses and get them to register to vote that day. The law has been moved in Colorado to give progressives a permanent advantage.
Absolutely. And one of the problems with that is that while they're all legal to begin with, the guy didn't vote, but we can't be sure that he didn't vote in Pennsylvania or where it happened to be. The other thing is there are all these ballots sitting in because it takes years for them to get off the rolls. And if the roommate just happens to vote 2 ballots, it's going to take another cycle or 2 for that inactive voter to drop off the rolls, if ever. So there are some huge problems. And if the Supreme Court says, oh, gee, you commingle ballots, not against the legislature's will, I don't know how they're going to rectify that for a remedy. But, oh, by the way, vote on one day. Boom, done.
And I think if Republicans are smart, if movement conservatives are smart, they'll take whatever the courts do. Things are going to come to light no matter how the courts rule. And they'll take the momentum from that new information and they'll try to turn it into reform as legislative sessions start at the state level in January. And that's what we should be doing. Some of these, like I said a second ago, some of these things are legal, but they do open the door for fraud. And this is the moment when the courts start bringing these things to light, even if it doesn't flip the presidential election, it's the moment to demand reform.
I couldn't agree more. Hey, Kurt, thank you so much. And thank you for walking for candidates. You know, the one thing that bothers me about all the election reforms is that the left uses it. There's no reason the right can't do the exact same thing. There's nothing that stops us from harvesting ballots. There's nothing that stops us from registering out-of-state kids and getting them to vote and using every other legal means. It's hard, dirty, expensive work. And our guys don't like doing it because campaigning's hard. Working door to door is even harder. And it's a retail politics stuff that our team doesn't like to pay for. And more importantly, we don't have volunteers because it is awful, awful work. But that doesn't mean we can't do it. They've given us the tools. They're just using them. We can use those tools as well. Tell you what, Kathleen Chandler runs our local government project here at the Independence Institute. She helps plug people into governments in Colorado and get involved to help grow the people we need to be here. So, Kathleen, I hope you're drinking something.
Of course, Diet Coke.
Oh, God. You are a disappointment to the entire organization.
Well, it's my one vice. I mean, what can you say? Well, I do have a thought that I believe that there is not systemic fraud. I think you have individuals who can, do 100 votes here or 50 votes here, and they do add up to fraud overall, but it's very hard to catch those individual, the mailman who inadvertently leaves the ballots over there, or the woman who goes in to pick up all the ballots at the local, old folks home, and she only takes those that she knows voted Democrat. I think that's the way fraud's perpetrated. And I don't know how you would catch them, because the individual over and over and over actually does add up. And that's really where the fraud is happening. And also, I think that the idea of Colorado, we love personalities and we love ideas, and we love the progressive of those, but we don't want to pay for it. So that's where these two ideas of why we keep voting for all these tax decreases and tax things when they're outright, but yet we vote for stuff like 118, which has the paid family leave. It's because the funding mechanism in it is hidden within the actual text of the bill, and it's harder to find. So I want paid family leave. I didn't realize I had to pay for it, so that's, I think, where Colorado has kind of that dual personality. But the biggest way that we can, as citizens, start affecting our government, it really is through the local government project. The thing I'm working on is why, we as Americans and as citizens of Colorado don't recognize that your fire district, your library district, your water districts, all of those are run by citizen activists that are not elected but are appointed. And we can actually affect a lot of policy, because I think, as Ben said earlier, those agencies make policy whether or not they're actually voted on by your state legislator or even your county commissioners. And that's really where a lot of this nefariousness, I think, or rulemaking authority, or even just flat out rule over your own personal life comes into play. So the next local government class is actually on Tuesday, December 15th. It's a Zoom. Everything's on Zoom now because of, the COVID. And it's at 6 o'clock in the evening, and it's a free class. So I would encourage you to go onto the Independence Institute website and look under the local government project and register. The more the merrier. We have been able to place people on all kinds of boards and commissions, and it's an exciting opportunity for people to actually make a difference in their local government.
It really is. And the work you've done is incredible. And the left is really good at plugging their activists into these boards and commissions. And then they run for city council. Then they run for state legislature. And then they become governors and senators and congressmen. And we wonder, where are our guys? Well, we don't put people in the beginning of that pipeline, and the work you do is great.
Well, and they also have, their Emerge program. I'm sure several people have heard about that. It's a very woman-centric formula where they actually take, a mom who's been, let's say, at the PTO meeting. They talk to her, they indoctrinate her for an entire year on everything of how to run a meeting, what is policy, how to articulate her ideas, and then they groom them, get them on a board, and then they actually fund them and have them run for office. And so they actually have an infrastructure and a plan. We on the right are so individualistic, and we want you to do it on your own, that we don't have a class, so to speak, on how to do this. So even though mine's only a one-time class, you've got the disposal of all of our white papers and think tank stuff we do at the Institute to help you along. And so, once you do get on a board, don't feel like you're going to be alone on that board. We might not have the infrastructure that they do, but we certainly have the ability to support you. So I would recommend everybody, take a look at it. Go to your county commissioner or your local city council and see where you can actually plug in as a citizen, volunteer, and an activist, so that you too can make a difference.
And it can be fun too. And by the way, you're at home. You don't even have to drink and drive. You're at home. Have a beer. You're trying to represent us. You reflect poorly on me with your sobriety.
I'm only having one little margarita. I'm gonna have to have my wife pick me up, since I'm such a lightweight.
Kathleen, thank you so much. It's great stuff. I tell you what, let's talk to Larry, and then we'll talk to Rick as well. And again, if you want to be part of the conversation on the Zoom meeting, use the little hand icon and raise your hand. We'll put you in the queue. If you're on any of the other platforms, including YouTube or Facebook or a caucus room, you need to go over to the Zoom meeting if you want to be part of it. Let's talk to Larry. Hey, Larry, tell me, what are you drinking tonight?
A little Don Q run that I brought from Puerto Rico. My question is, do you think Pence will make a run?
No, I don't think Pence will make a run. I don't think he would have the charisma to get it done. And also, I think he's a decent guy. I don't think he's really driven to do that. You've been closer in the Washington scene. You have a read on that?
I don't have a read on Pence, but I'll say this. I know a lot of people in the administration, a lot of people high up in the administration, and I have never heard anybody suggesting, even privately, that Pence had any interest in running.
I mean, he has been a splendid vice president. He has been a counterweight to the craziness that our president is. I would love it if he run. I don't think he'd win. I think it's time we need a good conservative woman who can take on Kamala in 4 years, because I think that's what we're looking at, and I don't see that person just yet. I hope that answers the question. Larry, do you want him to run? I think we're out with Larry. Larry, thank you so much. Let's talk to Rick. Rick, I love all the work you do for freedom in Colorado. Tell me, what are you drinking?
John, I'm so sorry. It's a school night, so I'm just drinking that water.
All right. Well, it's been nice talking to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Right.
Are you sitting in Elon Musk's Tesla?
Yes, I am. So my office is quite messy behind me, and I didn't want y'all to have to see that. So I found a really cool background in Zoom, and I like it. So yeah, better than my messy office. So John, I want to bring it back to local politics for a minute and talk. Congratulations on 116. I was a strong supporter of that, and of course voted for it. I also supported 117, and I'm hoping that 117 will give us a chance to shoot down 118 before it could go into effect. What's your thoughts on how that's going to work?
117 again says if there's going to be a large fee, a tax increase disguised as a fee, we get to vote on it. It came in just the nick of time. There was big plans for a carbon fee from the environmentalists. There are moves for a gasoline fee from people who wanted to raise money on a gasoline tax. So it came just in time. When 118 gets going in a few years, it will go bankrupt fast. For those who don't know, this is the family leave insurance program. The state is going to hire over 100 new people. We're going to tax everybody who works. We're going to put it in an account, and then we're going to pay people not to work. And amazingly, when you pay people not to work, they tend not to work. And this is such a lucrative benefit. You can get up to 90% of what you are making by not working. Who's not going to take that? And you can take your leave in unconsecutive days. You can take every Friday, Monday off for a year if that's how you want to do it. It will go bankrupt. Now the question is, when it goes bankrupt and they raise the payroll tax, will 117, if they try to do it as a fee, they would have to ask our permission. What my suspicion is they're going to just say they have the power to do so and see if the Supreme Court lets them.
Yeah, and I think they can argue. I think they can argue under the language of 117 that existing enterprises are grandfathered in. So even though they're increasing the fee to pay for the insolvent paid family leave program, they'll say that since it passed the same year as 117, it was grandfathered in. They don't have to ask permission. I think that's what the legislature will claim.
And with our terrible courts, they'll probably get away with it.
Yep.
Rick, that's a great question. Hey, have yourself a wonderful evening. All right, if there's any more sobriety during this cocktail party, we're just going to call it quits. So you better have a drink, or you better at least lie about it. Let's talk to Lohinos. Lohinos, welcome. What are you drinking?
Hey, thanks. I am actually sipping on a German Riesling tonight.
Very nice. I like that.
Very good.
All right.
Your camera's off, so we'll just have to take.
Trying to. Oh, I think I was trying to hit the button.
There you are. Oh my God.
Okay, so I'm not lying. I got my reasoning here. No, so one of the positives that I did see in this election, if you can say anything good from some of it, was we did see that President Trump improved his numbers some with minorities, so blacks and Hispanics. We did see his improved numbers. And so my question is, how do we translate, and I've got some ideas, but how do we translate that into improving that same group voting, I don't call them a block, but demographics into voting Republican in Colorado, especially as the Hispanic demographic is going to continue to grow in the state. How do we get more people like me to vote Republican in Colorado? Because I think we've got some potential there, as we just saw in this election where the President Trump improved his numbers. And, how do we add to that?
What an incredible question. When it comes to, for instance, the black vote, you don't need to win the black vote. You need to win an amount of the black vote. That's how he won last time. It's how he almost won this time. I'll have a comeback question, which is, how do we get minorities to understand that progressives are destroying their lives? How do we get African Americans to understand that when you vote for your progressives, these are the ones who gave us urban growth boundaries, and now you can't have homes you can afford because everyone's living on top of one another? How do we tell them that transit only enslaves poor people because rich people can get a car? How do we explain to them that education keeps poor people down because rich people can move to a better neighborhood or a private school? That's part of what we need to do is, and I think Trump went a long way to explain that to him and to them. And when Trump said to African Americans, "What do you got to lose?" That message was, your team has betrayed you. Why not try another one? I'm curious. You said you have an idea. What is it?
Well, I continue to focus on, a lot of the basics, which isn't, very sexy, but, that's why I'm a Republican, because of policy issues, because I'm religious, and a lot of, especially Hispanic families and a lot of minority communities, we do have faith and we believe in family. And so I always focus on trying to discuss why, support of the family, support of the church and religion, your ability to get a good education is how you can get long-term success. And that resonates. And I went home for, I had a cousin's wedding and my sister's 50th birthday. And, it was very clear that of the extended family cousins, we probably had more than half of the family was voting Republican this time. And so we saw some of that because we did successes with, the economy and unemployment, low levels of unemployment with, that community, for everybody, so they saw some of that success. And I think they were starting to feel that. My sister still.
You talked about Colorado. Let me throw this out as an observation. 4 years ago, Trump won Pueblo County, a largely Hispanic area. First Republican to win it, since 1960 or something ridiculous like that. He didn't win it this time, but there is a difference between the elitist Democrats of Boulder and Denver and their sanctimonious smugness and the working Democrats of Pueblo County and rural Colorado that I think are starting to get fed up with the smug elitists. Trump was able to tap into that, and we need to grow into that. And your thought about faith is a great one. The right wants to protect your religious choices. The left doesn't.
I have another thought on this, and I'd like to get your perspective. I have a lot of friends from Latin America, and during my time in DC, I actually got to know a good number of Latinos who are actually from Latin America. They live there. They were in DC for jobs, for internships, different things. And what I noticed is a lot of them are ardent socialists. But over time, what I realized is that these friends I had in DC were not your working class Latinos. They were from very wealthy, connected families in Latin America. These were people who, were working for the Organization of American States, and their parents were politicians and wealthy business people, and they were the elites of Latin America. And their kids were socialists, no surprise, because their families benefited from the socialist system. But what I suspect is that the types of Latinos who come to America are not the ones benefiting from the socialist regimes back home, from the oligarchies back home, from the rule of the elites back home. So they're leaving those places. They're coming to America looking for opportunities. And I believe we have a new divide in this country. Rather than being a divide between Republicans and Democrats, it's truly a divide between small R Republicans, people who want a republic, who think they're going to benefit from a republic, and the rule of the elites, the oligarchs and those who support the oligarchs. And I think Latinos have a very, very interesting perspective on this. They can smell a pig from a mile away because they've experienced it.
That's just racist, you bastard.
They can smell it from a mile away. They can smell it from a mile away because they've seen it. When they look at the Democrat Party, when they look at the oligarchs here in America, they know what they're looking at. They know what that is. And when they look at Donald Trump, they see a man of the people. And that's why they came to America. I think that's the reason why Latinos are coming over to the Republican Party, because they're small R Republicans.
I'll go with Lojinos on this as well. I think the way back to getting Colorado back to Colorado is through the Latino community, that these are people who believe in their families, believe in their faith, believe in hard work. They're intergenerational. These are our people, and Trump did tap into that.
What are your thoughts on that, Lojinos?
No, I agree. Those are the things that we see, and that's why you saw Florida go so Republican on the Hispanic vote, because they understand that socialism in Cuba, socialism in Venezuela, socialism, and all these countries have actually destroyed those countries, and they left that for a reason. And it's only the rich that survive in those socialist countries. So they're getting that. It's just broadening that to the rest of the demographic. When my parents were immigrant workers from Mexico, and the thing my parents emphasized to me, especially my dad, was hard work and education. And he said, with that, you can do what you want, unless you wanted, and there was nothing wrong with being a field laborer, but he said, if you don't want to do this, you better work your butt off in school and work hard, and you will have opportunities. And that's what I always continue to focus on. After I retired from the military, I was a school teacher, and I always emphasized that with all the students that I had, was hard work and education can get you, a long, long way, because this is still the country of opportunity, and we need to keep focusing that. But I do see that, I see that, and I just want to keep, spreading that word, and hopefully we can build on this. But I just want to see it happen in Colorado, more than it did.
Well, Hinos, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I raised my Star Trek Scotch glass up to you. Well done. Well said. Okay, well, let's talk to Tony, and then after Tony, we'll talk to Joyce. And we've got a few folks. We're going to keep going. Drink a lot. We make more sense when you do. Tony, welcome. What are you drinking tonight?
Thanks, John. Import. A little Heineken. Yeah. It's
Heineken. Oh,
yeah.
You're raising your
pinky. Yeah, you're raising your pinky when you drink that.
I am. It's a little pre-Veterans Day celebration. Getting started early. So my concern, or at least comments, are on Colorado's economy. In the past, I think prior to this administration, Colorado was among, I think, one of the better states, if not one of the best states in the country when it came to our state economy. But the things that I've seen kind of come through in this election, as well as some other things that are going on in the Capitol, kind of lead me down a path of wondering how long before we're kind of seeing our economy dip to where other blue states have gone. And so a few things that kind of come to mind are, first, obviously, the paid family leave. I think one thing to note about paid family leave is, before it was a referendum here, there was legislation introduced, right, last year, and it didn't make it through. But some estimates showed that being about $1 billion worth of funding needed to be able to make that work, because the idea was to centralize that as a government administered program as opposed to a different one. The Gallagher appeal in this recent election. Also, some other things I think folks might not be aware of, but legislation passed last session that codified unions for state employees. So WINS is now becoming essentially the SEIU arm in Colorado. That's going to be tremendously expensive. And then, finally, is the state kind of not being included in paid family leave. So they're creating their own paid family leave to make sure that their 30,000 or so employees also receive the same kind of benefit on top of the FML and vacation leave and things like that. So I guess my first question is, and I get my only question really is like, how do we get ahead of this, what I would imagine to be like an impending economic problem, and start shaping the narrative? So when it comes time to elect a new governor, we get to say, hey, we didn't do it, wasn't us. I mean, I guess, how do we get ahead?
First of all, you have your finger on the pulse of a lot of insider stuff. It's incredible. And you see what I see, and it scares me. I'm seeing what happens in Illinois as people are literally leaving. Their population is going because of the problems with government. I see in Michigan where it's gotten so bad, they ended up reforming and getting right to work and doing some other things. I worry that Colorado is where California was in the mid 60s. The liberal boom is starting to take over the state. The climate is so wonderful, and we have such great natural resources that people just keep coming and coming, and we have the economy, the margin, if you will, to add this program and add family leave and to add this thing and that restriction and put down oil and do this and do that. But over time it grows. And at some point it turns into California. At some point it turns into Illinois. I think we're on the beginning part of that curve. And the demographic changes in Colorado scare me. Most people who come to Colorado now come from a big government state. Most people who leave Colorado leave to a small government state. So I interpreted that as real Coloradans, those of us who wanted to write our own biographies and dictate our own destinies, we're leaving. Yep. And those who want to make decisions for other people are coming in. Will that have an economic consequence? Absolutely. When? I hope sooner rather than later, so we can correct it sooner rather than later.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, John, and I don't know why we're not hiring Tony as our fiscal policy center director. I mean,
actually, that's not a bad idea.
I'm on the market.
I got some competition.
Amazingly, Ben's going to be on the market at the end of the night too, so that's good.
No, Tony, you're right, and look, Colorado is in competition with other states for jobs, for businesses, for innovators, and the good and the bad of that is that Colorado has been fairly competitive because of many, many years of conservative control, and because of things like Tabor and other safeguards against higher taxes and that sort of a thing. But the downside of it is that friendly business tax climate and relatively friendly regulatory climate has attracted businesses, i.e. it's attracted Californians. And liberals coming from Californians, I like to say, are parasites. They move to a land of opportunity. They suck it dry for everything it's worth. And once the host is all shriveled up and they can't get anything else out of it, they move to a new land of opportunity like Colorado or Texas. And the thing is they don't change the way they vote. They vote for the same types of policies until that place is shriveled up too. I hope that doesn't happen to Colorado. But you look, Proposition 118, the paid family leave, it's an effective 200% corporate tax increase. You think businesses are going to want to come to Colorado anymore?
We saw Magpul leave, right?
You saw Magpul leave. On the other side is there have been several California-based venture capitalists who have moved here because they don't like California's progressive income tax. Funny how that works. Hey, Tony, thanks for the drink. I appreciate it. Let's keep rolling. Let's talk to Joyce, and then we'll talk to Charlotte. Joyce, tell me, what are you drinking tonight?
Oh, you're going to be disappointed.
Oh,
I don't drink this
lie.
late at night.
Just lie. Just every other woman lies to me. Just lie.
It would be Diet Coke and Amaretto.
There we go. That's fine.
All right. So my background is that I was an elected official. 2 years ago, I tried to get elected as an Adams County Commissioner, and we were wiped out by the blue streak. I served 8 years as mayor in Federal Heights and served 19 years altogether doing planning and zoning and the charter commission and on city council. My husband's now still on city council and is the mayor pro tem. So.
Awesome. Thank you for doing all that. That's hard work.
Well, it is. It is. Thank you. I served along the time that Hickenlooper was mayor of Denver. I can't believe he got elected. But anyway.
Wait. Say a little bit more about that. You had in your eyes like you knew something. Why can't you believe he got elected?
We served on a board on a well, actually he appointed me to oh, now I can't remember the name. It was the people who don't like oil and gas and all that in Denver.
The Energy Commission, the Energy Advisory Commission, something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, he appointed me to that board while he was governor. But in the meantime, he and I served part of those years. We were both mayors, and we served on a group that was from Metro North Chamber, and we were questioned. We were asked questions by the audience, and he was so nervous that his hands shook. And that's just an observation. I mean, I was sitting right next to him. So, but my question is probably very simplistic, but how long does anybody really believe that Biden be the president? How soon will Kamala take over?
I'll take that in two ways. One, I worry that Kamala is going to take over right away, in that as our new president-elect, as they say, I think he's going to get pushed around by his left. If you're asking how long will he be able to have the physical and mental capacities to be president, I don't know. I don't think he had the mental capacities to be vice president or even a senator. So we'll see. If you want to take that Deadpool, we can have something on it.
Well, I'll say this: Nancy Pelosi will have the thinnest margin in the House that Democrats have had in modern history when they've had the House. I think about 5 seats. There are far more far left socialist progressives in the House than 5. And she will need their votes. So the progressive left, the socialist left of the Democrat Party will push their weight around. I think that, Kamala Harris I was in the Senate and I saw this firsthand. Kamala Harris was certainly one of the most furthest left senators when I was there, maybe the furthest left senator. And she is going to be championing the will of that wing of her party. I also think, and I'll say this as a side note, that the Democrat Party has kind of made a deal with the devil with these Antifa rioters and far left Marxists, where they use them to help oust Trump, assuming he's ousted. But that also means with that they taught the Marxist radicals in their party that rioting and burning down cities would get them their way. I think it's very naive to think that now that Biden is president, that will stop, because you're going to have an internal battle in the Democrat Party between the moderates like Biden and Nancy Pelosi, to be quite honest, and the far left socialist Marxists. And what the party has taught those people is that burning down cities and looting and rioting works.
And it might. I mean, for me, the pictures of people in the cities celebrating Trump or Biden's victory in front of boarded up shops. The message was either we celebrate because we win or we loot your businesses because we lose. What do you want to do? Great call. Hey, Joyce, thank you. We're going to keep rolling with this. Let's talk to Charlotte and we'll talk to Vaughn after that. Charlotte, if you're with us, tell us, what are you drinking?
I'm actually just drinking a scotch.
Well, that's the way life is supposed to be. And your camera's off, so I can't believe you're actually drinking.
I actually cracked my camera to my phone.
Well, with my facial paralysis, I've also cracked a few cameras. But anyway, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I just had one question. Do you believe that Biden will be in office longer than 3 months, as the chat's been saying?
He will be in office longer than 3 months.
You think so?
I think my guess is he will get through his entire term. I think.
Oh wow, wow.
Remember, Dick Cheney wasn't supposed to live through his years as vice president, and he's still going strong. I'm not going to say he's with it. I'm not going to say that Biden is going to have his wits about him. I don't think he has his wits about him now.
I can't disagree with that. I mean, I think there's a chance. I'm not making any predictions. I'm not accusing anybody, but I think there's a chance that the Democrat Party already knows that Joe Biden has problems, and I think there's a chance that they'll let about a year go by or so, and then he'll very statesmanly make an announcement that, you know, he's got this condition that he's had this whole time, and they knew the whole time, but they'll, we have this condition. It's so somber and sad, and I'm going to have to, honorably step down and blah, blah. I think there's a chance that they already know that that's the case, and they're planning on it, and they're going to try to give it as much time as they can, maybe a year or so, but I don't know. I'm making.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey.
I actually. Yeah. Sorry for interrupting. I actually had another question.
Yeah.
Did you see on the news why Biden is obsessed with Dee Dee?
Who's Dee Dee?
This dick nigga.
What?
It was a prank.
Ah, got it.
We're a couple of old fogies. We don't have any,
we
a
don't-
bunch of policy nerds. We don't know.
We don't understand that stuff. Hey, let's talk to Vaughn. Hey, Vaughn, welcome. What are you drinking tonight, Vaughn? Let's see, is Vaughn still there? If not, after that, we'll talk to Dave as well. Dave Rasmussen.
Maybe we can get some polling from him.
Yeah. Actually.
Well, good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I think you need this on your table.
What is this?
4 grain straight bourbon.
Oh, nice.
Brewed at 1420 Acoma Street. And you could show, why is it backwards? Anyway, 4 grain straight bourbon, homemade in Denver.
I actually have the rye at home.
Really?
I do.
I'm impressed.
I do.
All right, what else do you have for us, Dave? Oh, I think Dave took the.
It's all right. So I've been saving them up for this meeting.
Oh, Nostrovia.
Cost.
Well, what concerns me is all of this yammer about corruption in the election, but nobody has come up with any evidence. So where's the evidence? So the votes gained by proving corruption is probably going to be very small anyway. I'm trying to get my camera straightened out here. Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely.
This is my very first conversation on a computer to another person ever.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Welcome to the 1990s. We're glad to have you here.
Also, I think that the audits of the very close elections that have come in near 1% are Trump's only chance. And I have not done the math, but if he were to become victorious in the audits of the close elections, such as Wisconsin, maybe even Pennsylvania and some of these other states, is it possible he'd still have a chance? And then his other thing to look forward to is the Electoral College. Do all of the electoral collegians vote strictly according to the popular vote in those states? So somebody, I hope, has done the math to see if there's any opportunity that he could squeeze a sliver thin victory with all of those positive outcomes. What do you think about that one?
What I think is we will find out really soon. The Electoral College, let's see, do they sit on the 14th of December?
It's mid-December. I forget the exact date.
So I think it's December 14th.
Close to that, yeah.
So time's ticking. If there's going to be something that changes, we will know very, very soon. Trump would have to have victories in several states and then going up to the Supreme Court and have victories there to be able to make any of that possible. I just cannot see it happening. I cannot see this Supreme Court doing it. Remember, the Supreme Court has no power. And John Roberts, the Chief Justice, is consumed with the image of the Supreme Court. His job is to preserve the sanctity and professionalism of the Supreme Court. I cannot see him doing that. You have a quick thought on that too?
Sure.
We'll go to James after that.
Number one is there's plentiful evidence of fraud and irregularities in the election. The real question
Where is it? Where?
Well, if you're interested in knowing and you really are open-minded about it, listen to the press conferences that the administration has put on recently. I mean, there's examples certainly of irregularities and at the very least isolated examples of fraud. Now, whether or not it's large-scale coordinated fraud that would change the results of the election, that's totally in question. But clearly, there are problems, right? That's number one. But as far as the Electoral College changing the results or going against their state and all this, I don't think there's any serious people really suggesting that right now. This can be a question for the courts, and I agree with John. They're going to look at the fact. The courts are going to look at the facts. But I agree with John that even if hypothetically there were enough examples of irregularities or fraudulent votes, the courts are very likely to, protect the courts. I mean,
for me, the question is, will people accept the election? And there will be a lot of us who don't. I'm not convinced that there's systemic fraud. I know there is fraud. There's plenty of examples. Is it enough to throw an election? I don't know. But the question is, will there be enough people who look at this new president and say, I don't think he's real?
Yeah, and that's the sad thing, is that really what all this is doing is it's throwing into doubt the integrity of our elections for the American people, and that's a shame.
All right, so as I'm working on this final buzz of scotch, we've got a couple more callers. So we're going to talk to James, and then we're going to talk to Abby to finish us up for the night, and then and then we'll just keep on drinking on our own, I suppose. So let's talk to James first. James, what are you drinking tonight?
Old Reliable, John.
Is that Ajax?
No, it's what's left of 2 fingers of Jim Beam. So still gets the job done. Hey, first of all, thanks for having this tonight. This is a a nice cathartic session to get a lot of things out off our chests. Pardon me if I'm not articulate. The second finger is starting to kick in. Just a different question, kind of the rewind it, going back to why Colorado is changing and all these Californians moving here. What impact do you think that the tax deduction limitation has had on immigration from blue states to red states and then turning those red states more blue?
What a spectacular question. A lot of people don't know that because of the change under the Trump tax code, we here in Colorado are now paying about $500 million a year more
on average
for our state taxes. So while we got a tax cut from Trump on the federal level, we didn't lower our flat tax rate until we just did it in this election. And so we're paying more in taxes. We're still paying more in taxes. I loved that part of the Trump tax code. I loved that it hurt those high tax states who couldn't write off their second mortgages and third mortgages and all the rest. I just delighted in that, and I loved how the blue states felt that they were somehow wronged now that they had to pay more of their fair share. I just loved it. I think it's one of the best parts of the Trump code.
I absolutely agree. I was in Congress advising Senator Cruz on tax policy at the time that we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And there's no reason at all why states like Texas, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, that are fiscally responsible, have relatively low taxes, don't put that, there's no reason why they should be subsidizing high tax states like New York and California. How is it fair to anybody else in the country that federal taxpayers pay to offset high taxes in Democrat states?
And the beauty of Republicans hopefully holding on to the United States Senate, they won't be able to change that. I know the personal income tax is set now for 10 years. Even more importantly, the corporate income tax is lowered, and that's a permanent lowering until the legislature or the Congress changes it. And right now they can't. And
there's another piece to this, actually, it just occurred to me. The changes that were made to SALT in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act encourage states like Colorado that are in the process of turning blue, or at least, we're blue, but our policies are still changing. It encourages states like Colorado not to go that direction, or at least not as much, which is a good thing.
James, great question. I tell you what, let's wrap this up. We've been drinking for an hour and a half, and even Ben is starting to look good to me, and that's not a good sign at all. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I love doing this, especially since we've been put under house arrest and we can't get out and meet each other as much as we'd like. I'm just thrilled that we're able to do this. Thank you for putting up with my hopefully temporary facial paralysis and the slurring that comes with it. And thank you for everything you do for the Independence Institute. I think about how the state is turning blue and how we're fighting against all odds. And I realize if not for 35 years of the Independence Institute fighting for policy, not for party, not for personality, but for policy, we wouldn't have what we have. We wouldn't have Tabor. We wouldn't have term limits. We wouldn't have concealed carry laws. We wouldn't have privatization. We wouldn't have charter schools. We wouldn't have these tax cuts. We wouldn't have these things. And as we worry about becoming the next California, as our state is now solidly blue, and as Ben has made very clear, we are now voting more California than even California is voting. What keeps us from falling off that edge? And I realize it's what you and I do. It's what we do around Independence Institute. It's what you make possible by helping us and being part of that. We have to protect our flat tax rate. They will be after that. We have to protect Tabor. They want to destroy that. Those are the two pillars we have to keep us from sliding in to the West Coast. And because you're part of what we do at Independence, because you help us and you grow with us and you send friends our way and you look at Complete Colorado every day. I hope you look at Complete Colorado every day for all the news, that you help out with our faster training to train teachers how to fight back in a school shooting. We're going to be having another terrific gun raffle very, very soon. So go to our website and check it out. But I just want to thank you for partnering with us to do these things. While Colorado had a lousy Tuesday a week ago, taxpayers had a huge victory because of what you made possible. And that's a permanent victory. Colorado needs us. So to all of Independence's friends and to the new realities, thank you for joining us. Nostrovia, until next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.